All right, so you're getting ready for a telecommunications engineering technician interview, huh? That's pretty cool. It's a field that's like always changing, and we're gonna give you what you need to like really stand out. We've got some good stuff from RoleCatcher, their
Mhm.
career guides, their interview guides, and they've even got info on how their AI can make your prep really personalized.
Yeah, it's about going way beyond just like listing off facts. We'll help you show that you really get the field and how what you can do matches up with what employers want.
So let's just jump right in with a question that's pretty much guaranteed to come up. How did you get interested in telecommunications engineering? The interview guide says, this is your chance to show you're really passionate.
Okay, so think back to like a specific moment that made you interested. Was it mess around with electronics when you were a kid, or like a cool project you did in school, or even seeing like how telecommunications affect things all over the world? Share that story. It makes you stand out.
And the guide also says to connect your own story to the bigger picture.
Exactly.
Mhm.
Yeah, the career guide points out how telecommunications connects people everywhere through voice data, everything. You can talk about how that connects with you and why you want to be part of something so important.
So instead of just saying, I've always been interested in technology, you could say, when I was a kid, I loved taking apart old radios and figuring out how they
Sure.
worked. That got me interested in electronics, and then that made me really passionate about connecting people through telecommunications.
Yeah, perfect. Now you've made it personal and showed you're really interested in how the field makes difference. And keep in mind the interviewer might ask, what parts of telecommunications engineering excite you the most?
Oh, that's a good one. That's where you can show off your knowledge and how excited you are about specific technologies like 5G, cloud computing, or the Internet of Things, which, by the way, the career guide highlights as major growth areas.
Exactly. And that's where RoleCatcher's AI can be a real game changer. Like their AI can actually analyze the job description and then it can tell you which of those technologies to focus on in your answer. So it's perfect for that specific job.
Wow, that's really something. It's like having your own personal prep team. Okay, let's move on to another common question. What experience do you have in network design and implementation?
Here's the thing. Don't just give them a list of every project you've worked on. Pick one or two that highlight skills that matter and show off how you solve problems.
So instead of saying, I've worked on a lot of networking projects, you could say, in my last job, I led the design and rollout of a whole new network infrastructure for our branch office. That involved. And then you could describe the tough parts, the solutions you came up with, and the good things that happened because of it.
Exactly. And to make your answer really good, use the STAR method situation task action result. It helps you tell a clear and interesting story. Oh, and RoleCatcher can analyze your experience and suggest which projects fit best with what the job needs.
That's so helpful, especially if you've got tons of experience to talk about. Now let's talk about troubleshooting. How do you troubleshoot network issues? They're definitely going to ask that one.
What they're looking for here is a way of thinking that makes sense. Think about what you do when you run into a network problem. Do you start by figuring out what's wrong? Checking connections, looking at logs? Walk them through how you do it and show them you think logically.
So instead of saying, use a bunch of tools to troubleshoot, you could say, the first thing I always do is get as much info as I can about what's going on. I'll ask users what they're seeing, check system logs for errors, and then you can talk about the specific tools and techniques you use to show how good you are at the technical stuff.
Exactly. And this is where you can mention any certifications or special training you have in network troubleshooting.
And don't forget, they might have follow-up questions. They could ask,
Yeah.
tell me about a time you had a really tough network problem and how you fixed it. Have a specific example ready that shows how well you solve problems and think on your feet.
And guess what? RoleCatcher's AI can help you pick the best example from your experience and even look at your answer to make sure it's clear and easy to understand. It's like having an interview coach right there with you.
All right, let's get into some technical things they might test you on. First, TCP and UDP. They might ask, can you explain the difference between TCP and UDP?
This is a classic networking question. Remember, TCP is connection-oriented, making sure the data gets there safely, while UDP is connectionless and it cares more about speed than making sure everything gets there perfectly.
To make it stick, could you maybe use an analogy?
Sure. Imagine you're sending a package. TCP is like registered mail. It makes sure it gets delivered and that everything's there in the right order. UDP is more like sending a postcard. It's faster and lighter, but there's no guarantee it'll get there. or that it won't get messed up along the way.
I like that. So TCP is for reliable ordered data transmission, like downloading a file, while UDP is for speed, like streaming a video.
You got it. Now be ready for follow-up questions like, can you give some examples of applications that use TCP and UDP? Or what are the good and bad things about each protocol? This is where showing you really understand it makes you stand out.
And RoleCatcher can quiz you on these things and give you feedback on your explanations so you can be clear, concise, and confident.
Speaking of confidence, let's talk about another important thing, showing that you're always learning. The interviewer might ask, how do you stay up to date with all the new stuff in telecommunications?
This is where you can show how dedicated you are to this field. Talk about industry magazines you read, online forums you're part of, or conferences you go to.
You can even mention specific technologies or trends you're learning about right now, like the new things happening with 5G network slicing or the latest developments in software-defined networking.
And this is another place where RoleCatcher can be really helpful. Their AI can look at industry trends and suggest good publications, courses, or certifications that fit with your career goals and what the specific job needs.
It's all about showing that you're someone who's always learning and excited about staying ahead of the game in this field that's always changing.
Okay, ready to tackle some more technical questions?
Absolutely. Let's dive into the world of VoIP and network security. So let's keep going with these interview questions you might get. Let's say they ask, can you explain how VoIP works? This is your chance to show you can make complicated technology easy to understand.
Yeah, so how do we explain VoIP without all the technical terms?
Think of it this way. Instead of your voice going over regular phone lines, it's turned into digital data and sent over the internet, just like email or file transfer. That's why you need good internet for clear VoIP calls.
Oh, that's a good way to put it. It's like sending your voice as data instead of an electrical signal.
Exactly. Now, they might ask, what are some advantages of VoIP over traditional phone systems?
And that's when you can talk about things like saving money, being more flexible, and being able to connect with other internet tools.
Right. And you can even mention features like call forwarding voicemail to email and video conferencing, which are usually part of VoIP systems.
Oh, and RoleCatcher's AI can be helpful here too. It can look at the job description and suggest specific VoIP features or benefits to mention so your answer fits the job perfectly.
It's like having a personal researcher helping you connect what you know with what the employer needs.
Okay, let's talk about network security. The interview guide says this is really important for telecommunications engineering technicians. They might ask something general, like, how do you ensure network security? Or be more specific, like, what experience do you have with firewalls?
This is where you show you understand different security levels and the tools and methods used to protect networks. Start by mentioning the importance of a full security approach, covering everything from firewalls and intrusion detection systems to access controls and encryption.
So instead of just listing security things, you could say, I think a layered approach to network security is important. Starting with a strong firewall to block unauthorized access, then intrusion detection systems to watch for suspicious activity.
Good. And then you can talk about specific tools or technologies you've used, showing your practical experience. For example, you could mention your experience configuring firewalls, setting up intrusion detection rules, or putting access control policies in place.
And don't be afraid to mention security certifications you have or training you've done. It shows you're serious about staying current in this field that's always changing.
Definitely. And RoleCatcher can help you figure out which security skills or certifications matter most for the job you're applying for.
That's so helpful because what you need to know can be different depending on the job and the company. Okay, let's switch gears and talk about something that can be kind of scary. The OSI model. They might ask directly, can you explain the OSI model? Or get more specific like, what does the network layer do?
Don't be scared of the OSI model. Remember, it's just a way to understand how different network parts work together. Start by explaining the 7 layers: physical data link network, transport session, presentation, application, and what they basically do.
To help remember it, I could use an analogy. I remember you said something about sending a letter in the career guide.
Yeah, think of it like this. The application layer is you writing the letter. The presentation layer makes it look good for delivery. The session layer connects you with the person you're sending it to. The transport layer makes sure it arrives in one piece. The network layer addresses and routes it. The data link layer gets it to the right mailbox on the street. And the physical layer is the actual paper and ink.
Oh, I like that. It's like breaking down the journey of a letter step by step.
Exactly. Now be ready for those follow-up questions. They might ask, what are some protocols that go with the transport layer? Or, can you explain the difference between a MAC address and an IP address?
That's when knowing each layer well and the protocols that go with them really helps.
And don't forget, RoleCatcher's AI can quiz you on these things and give you personalized feedback to make sure you're clear, concise, and you sound like you know what you're talking about.
Okay, let's move on to another technical question about specific network devices. What's the difference between a hub and a switch?
This is a classic networking question that checks if you get the basics. Remember, a hub is a simple device that sends data to every connected device, while a switch is smarter and only sends data to the device it's meant for.
So it's like the difference between yelling a message in a crowded room and having a private conversation.
Yeah. You can also say that hubs are usually cheaper and simpler, while switches work better and are more secure.
You could even draw a quick diagram to show the difference, how a hub connects all devices to one spot, while a switch connects devices to their own ports.
Good idea. Visuals can really help explain technical stuff. Be ready for questions like, when would you use a hub instead of a switch? Or what are the advantages of using a switch in a modern network?
Good points. Okay, let's talk about something less technical, but just as important, dealing with difficult people. The interview guide says this is a crucial skill for telecommunications engineering technicians because they often work with different teams and clients. They might ask you, how do you handle a difficult project stakeholder?
This is where you show your people skills and how you can handle tough situations professionally and politely. Start by saying how important it is to build good relationships with stakeholders and that you're all about open communication.
So instead of just saying, I would try to understand their concerns, you could say, I believe in being proactive with stakeholders. I would start by talking to them early on to understand their expectations, concerns, and how they like to communicate.
Perfect. And then you can explain how you deal with conflict, emphasizing listening, understanding, and being willing to compromise.
It's always good to have an example ready. The interview guide suggests thinking about a time you successfully dealt with a tricky stakeholder situation, even if it wasn't about technology.
Right. Pick an example that shows your communication skills, your ability to find common ground, and your dedication to getting a good result for everyone involved.
And RoleCatcher's AI can check your answer for clarity, how short it is, and the tone to make sure you sound confident and professional.
It's like having your own communication coach. All right, ready to talk about some broader career questions?
All right, so we've talked about a lot of the technical stuff. Now let's think about those bigger career questions that interviewers like to ask. You know, the ones that make you think about where you want to be in the future.
Right. These questions are your chance to show not just that you're ambitious, but that what you want matches up with what the company wants to do. Remember, you're not just looking for a job. You're looking for a career that you'll enjoy and that lets you grow and do something that matters.
So if they ask something like, where do you see yourself in 5 years? How should you answer that? It's hard because technology changes so fast.
Yeah, it is tough. But the important thing is to show them you've thought about it. Instead of giving them a super specific answer, talk about the skills you want to learn, the areas you're really interested in, and how you see yourself helping the company succeed.
So instead of saying, I want to be a manager, you could say, in 5 years, I see myself as a really skilled telecommunications engineering technician specializing in network security. I want to be the go-to person on the team, helping to design and build secure and reliable network solutions.
Much better. That shows you're ambitious, that you want to become an expert, and that you're serious about making a real difference on the team. And you can even connect it back to what the company is trying to do by saying something like, I'm especially interested in helping your company with its focus on cloud security and helping you become a leader in secure cloud solutions.
That's a great way to show you've done your homework and you get what the company cares about. Now, what about those questions about your strengths and weaknesses? Those can be tricky.
Yeah, they can be. But remember, they're not trying to trick you. When you talk about your strength, focus on things you're good at that are important for the job. Highlight your technical skills, your problem-solving abilities, how well you communicate, or how well you work on a team.
And for weaknesses, be honest, but pick something you're working on improving. Like you could say, I'm always trying to get better at giving presentations, so I've been taking a public speaking class and practicing how I talk.
That shows you know yourself and that you're always trying to learn, which are really good things. And guess what? RoleCatcher can help here too.
Oh, really?
Their AI can look at the job description and tell you which strengths and weaknesses to talk about based on what the job needs. For example, if the job is all about teamwork, RoleCatcher might say to highlight how well you work with others and mention that you're trying to become a more assertive communicator.
That's pretty cool. It takes the guesswork out of making your answers perfect for the job. Okay, Before we finish up, is there anything else we haven't covered that you think is really important for doing great in a telecommunications engineering technician interview?
I think we've covered a lot, but remember, being prepared is key. Do your research on the company and the job, practice your answers to common questions, and don't forget to have some questions ready to ask the interviewer.
Right. Asking good questions shows that you're interested and that you want to learn more.
And this is where RoleCatcher can help you stand out one last time. Their AI can suggest smart questions to ask based on the company's profile and the job you're going for.
So you're not only ready to answer their questions, but you're also ready to ask your own smart questions that show you're interested and that you take initiative.
Exactly. It's all about showing them the best you and leaving a good impression.
Well, I think we've given our listeners a lot to think about and some really useful tools to help them get ready for their interviews. Any final advice before we wrap things up?
Just remember, the telecommunications industry is always changing. And there are so many opportunities for people who love technology and are excited to learn and grow. Embrace the challenge, believe in yourself, and most importantly, let your passion show.
We hope this deep dive has helped you prepare for your telecommunications engineering technician interview. Good luck.